You will spend close to 90,000 hours of your life working. That's roughly a third of every waking hour you'll ever have, handed over to a job. But for almost the entire existence of our species, somewhere around 300,000 years, there was no alarm clock, no job, no boss, no schedule, no place you had to be. So what did people actually do with all that time? The answer comes from groups still living close to that original way of life today, and from what's left buried in the ground from tens of thousands of years ago. And once you see the full picture, it becomes very hard to look at your own daily routine the same way again. Start with the numbers, because they're almost unbelievable. In groups that still gather and hunt for food rather than farm it, adults spend roughly 15 to 20 hours a week on activities tied directly to survival. Finding food, building shelter, making tools. That number shows up again and again across completely different environments and continents. Dry grasslands, dense forest, desert. Different cultures, different climates, same result. For context, that's less than half of a standard work week today. Naturally, the question becomes, how do we know ancient humans, tens of thousands of years ago, lived anything like this? The answer comes from bone. When skeletons of early hunter-gatherers are compared to skeletons from early farming populations, the difference is dramatic. Early farmers were shorter, showed signs of nutritional deficiency, had teeth riddled with cavities from grain-heavy diets, developed arthritis in their spines from repetitive labor, and died younger. Hunter-gatherer skeletons tell the opposite story: taller frames, healthier teeth, far less joint damage. Their bones suggest a body doing less repetitive physical strain, not more. But the most fascinating evidence isn't about survival at all. It's about something that shouldn't exist if life was a constant, exhausting struggle. Art. Deep inside a cave system in southern France, explorers found paintings created roughly 30,000 years ago. Horses, lions, rhinoceroses, rendered with shading, perspective, and a clear sense of movement. Not crude scratches. Sophisticated work that required skill, planning, and above all, time. Someone spent hours, possibly days, working by firelight on a wall no one needed to survive. In a cave in South Africa, archaeologists uncovered shell beads roughly 100,000 years old, each one carefully drilled through to be strung as jewelry. Shells that had to be carried tens of kilometers from the nearest coastline, then worked by hand with stone tools, purely to look beautiful. In a cave in Germany, researchers found a 40,000-year-old flute carved from a bird bone, with finger holes spaced with real precision. Whoever made it understood pitch, understood music, and devoted real time and care to an object with no survival use whatsoever. These aren't rare exceptions. Across 3 continents, sites tens of thousands of years old are full of decorative objects. Tools more elaborate than necessary, and items that demanded hours of focused effort with no practical payoff at all. This is what people did with the time they weren't spending on survival. They made things beautiful. So picture an actual day. You wake around dawn. Last night's fire is still smoldering. Someone adds wood. Breakfast is whatever's left from yesterday, eaten slowly, socially, with conversation and loose, unhurried plans for the day. Not because anyone has to plan, because that's simply what people do with each other. By mid-morning, a small group might head out to hunt or gather. But here's the key detail: not every day. If the last hunt went well and there's food stored, no one leaves camp at all. Instead, the morning might go toward sharpening a spear, weaving a basket, softening an animal hide. Not work in the modern sense, no clock, no supervisor, just the quiet satisfaction of skill, because being good at something earned real respect. When hunting does happen, it's nothing like the frantic chase in films. Many groups hunted through sheer endurance, tracking an animal at a steady pace for hours until it overheated and simply collapsed. Something the human body is uniquely built for because of its ability to sweat and cool itself while moving. The hunt, including travel, might take 3 to 6 hours. By early afternoon, the productive part of the day is essentially finished. What happens next is the part modern life makes almost impossible to imagine: nothing and everything. People rest in the shade, they talk, they play with children, they groom each other, they make jewelry from shells, teeth, or bone, they nap. In groups still living this way, adults spend something close to 6 hours a day in pure social time, not working, not sleeping, simply being with other people, laughing, telling jokes. In a world with no money, no police, no contracts, your survival depended entirely on your relationships. If people didn't like you, they had no obligation to share food when you were starving. So enormous time went into those bonds, not because it was productive, but because it's what kept people human to each other. Then the sun sets, and something remarkable happens. During daylight, conversation tends to stay practical, where animal tracks were seen, which plants are ready, who didn't share fairly. But at night, around a fire, the overwhelming majority of conversation shifts entirely to story. Myths about how the world began, tales of ancestors who did impossible things, jokes, adventures from far away. This, many researchers argue, is where human culture as we know it was actually born. Gods, spirits, the past, the future. The kind of thinking only possible once your stomach is full and you finally feel safe. And sleep itself looked different too. Before artificial light existed, humans appear to have slept in two distinct phases: a first sleep of roughly 4 hours, then a quiet waking period of an hour or two in the dark, then a second sleep of another 4 hours. So a full day looked something like this: 4 to 6 hours securing food or making tools, around 6 hours of social connection, storytelling and play, roughly 8 hours of sleep split into two phases, and the rest spent simply resting, sitting, watching the sky, existing without needing to justify it through productivity. Then, about 10,000 years ago, something changed completely. Humans began planting seeds and domesticating animals. And agriculture turned out to be a trap. Farming could feed more people, so populations grew. More people needed more food, so farming expanded. Within a few generations, there were too many mouths to feed any other way. There was no going back. Farming demanded far more labor: plowing, planting, weeding, harvesting, defending crops from animals and raiders. The skeletal record is unambiguous. Early farmers worked harder, ate worse, and died younger than the hunter-gatherers who came before them. But populations kept climbing, and larger populations needed specialists, toolmakers, potters, then soldiers, administrators, and eventually the idea that your time could belong to someone else in exchange for resources. By the time cities existed, the original human rhythm was gone, replaced by schedules and obligations. The need to work most of your waking hours just to survive inside a system humans built for themselves. Today, you'll spend around 90,000 hours of your life working. Your ancestors spent a fraction of that. You sleep in one block and call waking at 2 a.m. insomnia. They slept in two phases and used those quiet hours for reflection. You spend years chasing markers of success invented by the society around you. They woke up each morning already enough, with nothing they needed to prove. You make art if you can find time after work. They made art because they had time. We're not a different species, but we live so differently from the way humans lived for nearly all of our existence that in almost every meaningful sense, we might as well be. We traded freedom for food security, leisure for population growth, and time itself for productivity. And most of us never even noticed the exchange happening.